95%. 95% of generative AI pilots fail to deliver measurable business impact, according to a recent report published by MIT. CMOs are rushing to deploy AI agents, but the gap between AI promise and impact isn't changing yet. Despite billions in AI investments, enterprise AI experiments are floundering left and right, while smaller, more nimble organizations are seemingly more successful in navigating the new world order in marketing. So, what separates the 5% of AI implementations that actually work from the 95% that don't? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and joining me today is Ariel Kelman, the President and Chief Marketing Officer at Salesforce, the world's largest cloud based CRM and the creator of Agentforce, Salesforce's platform for building AI powered workflows. And today, Ariel and I are going to break down why most AI agents fail and how Salesforce's trust-first approach is driving real results with more than 18,500 companies, and what it really takes to move AI experiments to becoming agentic marketing organizations. Ariel, welcome to the Martech podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Excited to have you on the show. Thanks so much for giving us your time, and what a privilege to have you here. Salesforce is focusing on agentic workflow primarily through Agentforce. So, talk to me about Salesforce's approach to agentic AI and why you're seeing this really large 95% failure rate
Yeah.
across the industry.
It's a good question. I think maybe I'd like to start with a little bit on the difference between making generative AI work for business and having it work in the consumer space. And it's
Mhm.
really all about context and data. You think about, I want to go search how to make a chocolate chip cookie recipe on ChatGPT. It's been trained on thousands and thousands of chocolate chip cookie recipes.
It's a great bartender,
Be
too.
interesting to figure out, how many. But and so that data it's in the model. But when we talk about business AI, these models, whether you're using OpenAI, Gemini, whatever you're using, Anthropic, they're obviously not trained on all the data about your business. You have to feed that in at runtime. And that context of understanding about your business and in the world of sales, marketing, and support that we live in here at Salesforce, understanding the context of the customer is absolutely required if you're going to get any useful information back out of an AI model. And so that's probably the most important thing we've built underneath Agentforce is really the ability to provide AI the right context by giving you a trusted way to connect to all of your enterprise data. So you think about a customer coming to your website and trying to solve a customer support problem and having the AI understand what products have you bought, where are you in the world, because there may be regulatory things it needs to know about, whether you've called before, all the previous interactions you've had with customer service agents, using that to give in it, and that's the context in people's brain when they're helping out, you're a customer, and so that is really the secret sauce of what we've done. That's the difference between the failure that people are seeing when they're building agentic AI use cases on their own, and when they're using a platform that's really purpose built for this, that has done a lot of the heavy lifting on the infrastructure layer for you, so that you can focus on building the functionality of your AI agents, not all the plumbing required just to make it actually capable of working.
Yeah, I was training a friend of mine who had never used GPT before, ChatGPT before,
Yeah.
and trying to teach him the understanding of how important the context is and how to train the model. He's writing children's books, so I wanted the model to go search for different children's books and figure out what's popular before it started to help him as a copywriter. And that understanding of context first, actually, it's exactly the same thing that HubSpot's head of AI, Nicholas Holland, when he came on this podcast, said too, is that we have passed the area in the evolution of artificial intelligence where prompting is the most important part. We now need to consider context to be the most important part first. You have Agentforce built on top of Salesforce, so naturally there's Salesforce's data being fed into how people build their agents. It seems like an MCP server is also a solution to this problem for other tools. How do you think about the difference between that native integration
Sure.
of Salesforce data to Agentforce as opposed to marteching this
Yeah.
together for other
Well,
solutions?
I mean, for a lot of the use cases that we're seeing with our customers in the world of sales, service, marketing, we have a lot of the data already in our platform, all that context that it needs around the customer. And we have a customer data platform called Data 360 that helps pull data in from all the other systems that you might have,
Mhm.
enterprise data warehouses, integrating with your operational systems. So it gives you that single place to go for Agentforce to get all the context that it needs. And so most of our customers are able to get to really use that to feed all the data. I mean, a lot of it, here's the thing, is a lot of this comes down to a problem that most marketers and most MarTech organizations have been working on for a long time, which is getting their data in order. And even pre-AI, even non-AI use cases, I mean, I feel very strongly that you can't do anything sophisticated in digital marketing without having your data in order in terms of having some type of customer data platform where you have a single source of truth about all the things that you're doing with a customer, all your internal data, your first party data, and then signals that are coming in from other systems as well. That's the context that you need. And I mean, I think where MCP comes in is integrating between different AI tools, and it's something that we support on our platform. And we've announced other systems be able to integrate. We've announced partnerships with companies like OpenAI, so you'll be able to do things like update your forecast directly within ChatGPT.
Mhm.
So I think MCP is a pretty good, useful foundational technology that's really changing how easy it is to integrate all these different agentic systems.
Yeah, fundamentally, there's the garbage in, garbage out
Yeah,
problem, and MCP is the translation between wherever you're
yeah.
holding your data to whatever large language model. I wanna go back into agentic workflows and marketers struggle to actually get something of value. What's actually happening when customers try to deploy AI agents, and where are they getting stuck?
Well, I mean, first of all, to be clear on that 95% study, it was really just about generative AI. There is probably a portion of those that were agentic, but I would guess it's probably a low percentage. But I think just if you say broadly across AI agents and generative AI projects in general, I think the some of the failure modes that need to be avoided that I see fairly often, you know, on the technical side, it's the data, and on the people side, it's um, I think too many closed-minded people that aren't willing to work differently. And I think this people aspect of it's underrated, where to use generative AI to solve problems and do things, you have to change the way that you work. And all the people we work with, everyone kind of has a rating, almost like a Madden football rating. If in addition to like agility or, strength, imagine if you had one like um, change, comfort,
Change
right?
management,
So
yeah.
some people love that every time
Flexibility.
there's people we work with, they see something new and they're like, oh, wow, okay, I'm going to stay up all night and go use this. This is amazing. And I want to tell everyone about it. And there's other people who are like, no, 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 that's not how we do things here. And, when we're using, you think about using AI to make, for video production in a company, something we've been doing a lot with, it's a completely different way to do things that often challenge people's, internal view of themselves of what are they good at. So if you think, let's say you do something we do in technology marketing a lot, customer reference videos. You go to the customer side, do a shoot. If you think your expertise is in setting the shot up right, like, you don't even need a cinematographer. You tell your camera guys where to go and you're like, and now, like, you can have one of your product marketing people team up with a video engineer adept in AI tools. They're going to be able to do things completely differently and a
Mhm.
lot faster. And some people love this, some people don't. So what I found is one of the biggest keys to success is having the executives and all the leaders of the different marketing teams use the AI tools on their own and model that behavior for the rest of the team. And that's gone a lot way, because I think some people just underestimate the change management aspect of it. And it's not like change management like you need, some big consulting firm to come in. It's simply like inspiring your team that there's a reason why they should nudge themselves to get comfortable doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah, there's the question of tops down versus bottoms up, right? Do you have your workforce start to learn it, cultivate individual contributors, and then once they have the skills, then they can rise up the ranks as opposed to, and I'm curious to hear how you do this at Salesforce, right? In theory, most of the time, the executives at your company tend to be the older, more experienced people. And not to age or stereotype, generally, those are the people that are most resistant to change and rely on their previous experience. So, how at Salesforce are you thinking about having your leaders start to learn the technology?
I think like a lot of cultural things, it's top down. I mean, they see our CEO is using all these tools all the time, playing around with them, experimenting, and really across my leadership team, um, each of those leaders is getting hands on with the tools. I mean, like if just to go back to the video example, our chief creative officer who runs our whole creative and brand team, he, I mean, he has experimented with, over 100 different video production tools, chaining them together, basically doing entire productions without shoots with AI generated video, and a mix of existing assets. He figured it out on his own first and then asked the team, okay, let's figure out how to operationalize this, which led us to different processes, hiring some different people. And then on our product marketing team, I give an example. This guy, Patrick, who runs our product marketing team. He, when we bought a company called Informatica.
Mhm.
And when he was prepping to do press interviews for explaining to people, why did we buy this company? He took the messaging document, put it into Gemini, created a gem, a prompt template to simulate the different reporters he was going to talk to, ask him questions, and then grade him on his responses as compared to the messaging document.
Right.
Uh, you know, you can call this prompt engineering, but he thought of it as like, yeah, I played around with Gemini for like literally like 18 minutes he did. And then he had it done. And then between meetings, he would go and run mock interviews and get scored.
Mhm.
And, then he goes and tells his team, like, this is what I'm doing. I had a problem where I knew that, a large language model would be able to make me more productive and make me more effective by simulating things and, in a text driven way that we know it's good at. So, that, it's like a lot of things. If the leaders are getting their hands dirty, I think it's a lot more credible if you're asking people to do the same thing.
I understand the purpose of the example, and I just wanna share when I've done something similar, I was going through a valuation exercise for our production company and was, doing mock rehearsals for, "Here's what I hear everything is. How do I have this conversation in advance to try to prove, that I hear everything should be acquired by this other company?" And every single time I was able to convince ChatGPT that it should buy my company for $100 million. The valuation of my company is nowhere near $100 million. Like, it's an absurd premise. So how do you,
I
when
will.
you're going through and
It's a
testing
good.
these
I like
exercises?
this example because I think this will kind of reinforce maybe something I was talking before about the importance of context and data. When you did that, did you first feed in to ChatGPT, um, all the details around your company, what the revenues are, how you think about valuation? You probably didn't, right?
I did.
Oh, you did.
But I also positioned the acquisition talk to be, quote, "a strategic," and talking about Podcast OS, the methodology which we use to produce our content, and how it provided incremental strategic value. And so I think that the acquisition should be on a value exchange, not on a multiple of revenue or other traditional. And of course, it agreed with me, and then we moved on because it
Yeah.
wants to make me happy.
Although, an AI company thinking that an AI company should be valued highly doesn't entirely shock me.
Yeah, maybe I should sell the company for $100 million. Maybe you're right, but That said, I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the actual numbers. Once you have your senior executives playing around with your AI and navigating your change management, what are you seeing in terms of the hard ROI numbers from companies that have successfully deployed agents?
Well, let me maybe start with what we've done. The first Agentforce project, I'll kind of go outside of marketing for a second, I'll come back, was on our website for customer support. So we created an agent on help.salesforce.com, so we could help customers resolve problems they're having with their Salesforce deployments. I think customer service is one of the most obvious agentic use cases. And in the past year, we've had over 2.5 million agentic conversations for customer support. At the same time, 1.6 million with people, and it's really freed up our human agents to deal with the more complex issues. And overall, we've resolved 77% of all the customer support cases using Agentforce, and then that's lets us save over $100 million. And part of that is we were able to redeploy some of these customer support agents to be forward deployed engineers that essentially are going and working with our customers on their own deployments. So building more customer success instead of fixing problems, which is it's a career progression they often do anyways, but it lets escalate some of them on that faster. So that's on the customer support side. In marketing, we put a agent on our website to answer people's questions. You can go and say, hey, why should I use Salesforce and the Data 360 product as a CDP instead of Segment or Adobe? And
Right.
it'll go give you product comparisons, or you can ask any kind of product question, or say, transfer me to a salesperson. Now, the interesting thing is at first we saw less leads going to sales. Now, is that bad? Well, maybe,
Depends
maybe not.
how sales is
Depends.
working, but yeah.
But as you can imagine, when you're letting people click connect me to a salesperson on your website, some of those are useful conversations for sales, and some of them are not. A bunch of them are customer support calls. So our hypothesis was we could drive basically have a smaller quantity of higher valued leads, and so we measured it in terms of total pipeline generated from the website as a source of sales pipeline. And we've been able to see a 20% increase in sales pipeline from using this agent on our website. And then lastly, lead follow-up in general. So we route a portion of our sales leads to an agent first instead of sending them to the human salespeople. And that allowed us to work almost 200,000 more leads that we previously just they scored too low. So we wouldn't follow up on them. And that generated $27 million of incremental pipeline.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Qualified, which I guess the acquisition isn't completed, but the AI-driven SDR tells us a relatively similar story, which is you can implement and train an AI SDR to work nights and weekends, right? The times when it's harder to staff and manage a chatbot, and it seems like that is essentially casting a wider net. Um, yeah, do you think that's sort of a similar story with customer service and your AI chatbot on the website? Is it that it's catching more leads, or is there actually an improved conversion for the leads that are coming in that would be those high quality top tier leads?
Well, it's catching more. Now, so here's the interesting part is that there are some people, if the website's doing a better job of answering people's questions and actually giving value to your visitors. This is like a B2B. You got to set the context a little bit. This is B2B technology. The vast majority of our products are bought through a salesperson. If you're evaluating, large scale customer service systems, um, uh, uh, email SaaS applications, you're going to go look at a bunch of vendors. It's not about capturing them on that website that moment and immediately converting them like in a more B2C concept. So
Mhm.
a lot of this is we're taking it from first principles and not just blindly tuning conversion rates, where if we can better educate our customers, we believe good things will happen. And so that's why like we are seeing lower lead volume, but the conversion rates are higher, as you suspected, because they're, if people can get simple answers, or actually get directed to the right place if they have customer support calls and not end up as a sales lead, that's good for our business. It's good for our brand too. People are less frustrated. But in some ways, you got to change the metrics. I'll give you another example. So we have our website set up such that if we recognize who you are, and you click on a pricing page, we'll send a Slack message to the salesperson that says, "Hey, you have a customer here that, they seem pretty interested in this product.
Hmm.
You may want to like reach out to them and ask them if they need any help."
Right.
Uh, That doesn't generate a sales lead. The marketers aren't counting that as pipeline from sales leads. So first, I had some people complaining with like, "Oh, no, 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 this is going to impact our numbers." It's like, change the fucking numbers. Like, it's a change management thing, right? Like you got to be fluid with your metrics and make sure they're always aligned with the business outcomes you're trying to drive. So in this case, we're like, okay, how about we figure out how to measure the incremental impact of these Slack messages and add those onto, the benefits we're getting from our different digital systems. So we adjusted all the metrics, but I mean, salespeople absolutely love it, and the customers like it too.
Yeah, it's funny. It's actually gets into back to the change management. There's this whole underlying problem with artificial intelligence and what I called the AI revolution, or the new world order of marketing. The tech stack which we're using is changing, right? We have to learn how to use a new tech stack. The way that we evaluate everything, the buyer journey has dramatically shifted, and all the marketing channels are changing as well, right? People aren't relying on Google search as much. I'm not going to project Google is dying, and obviously they're a big player in AI with Gemini as well, but the methodology of which we find information and then of which we engage with companies to go through the sales process is totally different, and it's changed in the last 18 months. So, how do you think CMOs should restructure their teams to think about this agentic AI driven workflow? Like,
Yeah. What's funny is in some ways, like the fact that your customers may be getting information about your product from an agent first, from AI instead of a human, drives you to make your messaging more human. And I'll sort of explain this. Like when we first put uh, Agent Force on our website, um, we're testing it obviously. And some of the data, it's like you ask a question, you go, why doesn't this come back? And you go and tune it. And it turned out that the way you organize the information on your website, the more it looks like the way a human would ask questions, the better the LLMs understand it. The more that you make it like an org chart, the worse. So, for example, if you basically have your pricing information only on every product's pricing page versus having a document that clearly explains how your company approaches pricing and then gives the examples, the latter is way better for, AI SEO, and also which is also how our agent would work as well. And there's a lot of cases like that where unorg charting our content and putting it more into plain English increased it improved our AI SEO results. So it ended up being good for the product marketing team because it kind of reinforced a customer centric way of communicating, which I thought was kind of ironic.
I can't help but laugh because the last meeting I had with a friend of mine who I worked with at eBay 15 years ago, I believe the company is called Everything Machines, but I'm sorry, Jeff Rain, if I got the name wrong, is exactly this, which is the text and language which you use on your website to be public facing is not necessarily the same text and language that you would use to feed to an AI agent. And so essentially you need to have two separate sets of texts and two different ways for agents to collect and analyze them, and they are essentially making the back of the canvas for your website, which is here's all the information that we're feeding to the LLM, so it has all of the details. Because
Yeah.
humans only want a little bit of
Right.
information, and the bots want everything, and
Yeah.
then they synthesize it down and communicate it.
We've done it by putting like really long FAQs for everything. But I would argue, like, let's say you didn't have all those FAQs and you could only do one web page. I think that it would be better for the customer if you did the same content that was more readable by the LLMs, because in many cases we have this tension between between clear communication and like conversion rates and brand and how you want it to look. And again, I'm just saying the B2B context where immediate conversion is less important than actually getting your ideas into the brain of the website visitor. I personally believe we could veer a little bit more into clearly explaining our messages.
I could look at 10 B2B companies' taglines and not know what the company is because the wording is so fancy, right? And nobody just wants to say, "We're another CRM," right? "We're a little different. We're a CDP."
You
Everybody
gotta,
wants
yeah,
to
you gotta have
describe.
a functional description. I mean, this is another AI use case for us. Where we're using a product writer for
Yeah.
some of the generative AI, and we set it up so that I have like a 15-page product messaging kind of Bible. This is like, here's how we think about product messaging, and one of those rules you just reminded me of is always start with a functional description. People, it sounds obvious. Explain what your product does first before you talk about the benefits, but we often fail to do that a lot in marketing. And so when people are writing and editing messaging for our web pages, copy for emails, we have writer go and check it against those product messaging guidelines and reject, say, sorry, like that's not going to work. You introduced a product but didn't say what it does. So I think that this can really help us scale.
So, talk to me about your advice to the marketers. There's thousands and thousands of marketers that are using Salesforce, and they're going through this transition, and honestly, Salesforce is, you know, one of the things that keeps them set in their ways. I'm sure lots of people have been using the platform for a decade, but now they have to think about marketing in a completely different way. What advice do you have to them to make the transition to going from sort of static AI, pre-AI marketing and outreach for established companies to this
Yeah.
new way of working?
Well, we're doing a lot of work to make that transition easy by building the AI functionality directly into the product. From something as simple as like, summarize this opportunity for me, for our salespeople, to in our marketing cloud product, we've added something called two-way email. So you think about sending email campaigns with just a static offer, as opposed to sending an email campaign with an offer that says, I'm an AI agent. You can ask me any question as well. And then letting the customers reply to the campaign and engage with it so they can be more interactive as opposed to just spraying out all these static offers. Um, we think that it should be an evolution, not a revolution. Now people are thinking. And so we're trying to architect it to be simple. And I think on the SDR agent side as well, letting people set those flows up in a very seamless fashion so it's integrated with the rest of our platform.
I could not agree with you more in the sense of evolution over revolution. And I personally, and I think that there's probably a lot of other marketers feel this sense of anxiety of needing to rip and replace everything that we've done all at once and start a new system as opposed to evolve the existing systems we have. Not every platform is Salesforce and is taking the agentic first, help you do it workflows. And so do you see the sort of SaaS business changing? Do you think that there's gonna be turmoil around SaaS businesses that aren't evolving to be agentic first?
Yeah, for SaaS, the successful SaaS companies are evolving their product functionality to include agentic workflows in every portion of their products. And this has been a key part, really the core part of our product strategy. And I think we're in a good place. We have what I consider the hard part of the infrastructure, the data and the context, and integrating that with the large language models in a trusted and secure way. This is this kind of the challenge with AI in the CRM world is the data that it needs access to is both, is for sure the most sensitive data in most cases for companies, but also in many cases, the most complicated data. So finding an easy way and a secure way to feed that in to get that context in every single call to the LLM is absolutely critical. But we've seen some companies try to say, "Oh, I'm going to throw away my enterprise app, train an LLM and all the data," and that didn't work. And what people are finding is that this data, the security, the deterministic workflows they built up in their company are not an alternative to AI, but a foundation to doing AI in a way that actually works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like there's not only evolving your existing stack, but also a different mindset that goes into taking the stack and then enhancing it and sort of
Yeah,
supercharging what you've been doing
yeah,
for years.
yeah.
It is a very confusing time for marketers. I want to move on to our lightning round, where I'm going to ask you a couple of questions around the rise of agentic
Sure.
marketer and a little bit about your career as well. Are you ready?
Yeah, I am ready.
All right, here we go. You've worked directly with CEO heavyweights, Mark Benioff, Andy Jassy, Larry Ellison. What are the traits that they all share?
I think very high levels of intellectual curiosity, an eagerness and ability when they see new things to like jump on them and ask question after question and question until they fully understand it and can adapt to all these new things that come at them all the time.
It seems like there's a personality trend that is similar between the three of them, and the term that comes to mind is alpha male, which may have a negative connotation, but like people tend to see those three leaders and want to follow and believe what they say. Am I interpreting it right? And why do you think that
Well,
is?
I definitely agree. You got to be inspirational as a leader when you're selling change and if you're running a tech company, what's important now is very different than what was important a year ago and what will be important in the future. So you have to take all these new things and help your company understand, with the right level of inspiration and leadership and, leading by example. I think, all 3 of these guys are really great at it.
Let me ask you the opposite question now. What's the difference between the three of them?
Oh, I don't know. We could talk for hours. They all have their own personality. I get asked a lot about, "Oh, wow, the team's struggling on this thing. Oh, that CEO is really demanding." And I think the one constant in, B2B technology is CEOs, love to torture the marketing team. They just have very different torture tactics. In the end, it's all from a good place, because you can't communicate effectively. You're never going to succeed in these technical pursuits because at the end of the day, you're building technology that's hard to explain. And that's what the marketing team is there to really explain at scale.
All right, I want to move on to our next question. What's the biggest misconception CMOs have about what AI agents can actually replace today?
I think the biggest misconception is an overfocus on using it to save money and using it to replace people. Maybe I'll just put on that last one of that. What we're trying to automate are humans, as opposed to thinking at a more granular level that what we're trying to automate with agents are tasks. And those tasks often span multiple people. And that if you can automate these tasks, you make your employees so much more productive and they can get more done more quickly.
I understand the idea of automating tasks, and one of the beauties of LLMs is they can shift with no sort of problems between, okay, you're a product marketer, now you're a designer, okay, now you're a copywriter. But the concept of automating humans is a little fuzzy and confusing to me. Explain what you mean.
Well, I mean, people go, oh, well, you know, which jobs can we replace with AI? Okay. Oh, this job, this, no, 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 this job we could never do because we can't have, an AI do all this stuff. It's the wrong level of abstraction.
Mhm.
Um, because if there's a certain job that has, let's say, 50 things that it does, any one of those that you can automate with AI, you are increasing the productivity of that person. And when you increase the productivity of that person, you can do many things as a business. You can uh, give that person better work-life balance by letting them not have to stay up all night for a crazy deadline, which we have in marketing a lot. You can allow them to say yes instead of no more often, right? Marketing, we're always asked to do like almost always 3 to 4 times as much stuff as we have, resources to do.
Amen.
So, okay. So you can do more things in the same amount of time. Or you can do the same amount of things with less people, of course. But like what I've seen mostly is in the vast majority of cases across marketing, the way that people are um, cashing in these productivity benefits is doing more with the same amount of people and doing it more quickly, and then trying getting a little bit of burnout protection with all these date driven deadlines that we get.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest misconception for me, people fear around the new technology as if it is going to replace them, as opposed to thinking what an opportunity it is that they now have the ability to have essentially super intelligence, which I know is a broad term that everybody's throwing around right now, but we all can get access to so much more information and have it synthesized to be right sized for what we can interpret so much faster than ever before in human history. And people are sitting here saying, but it's going to take my job, as opposed to this can make me better at my job. And so there's a mind shift around what the possibilities are that I think is
Yeah,
a
it's well, that
misconception.
saying that's become kind of famous now is like, you're not gonna be replaced by AI, you're gonna be replaced by someone who's great at using AI.
I could not agree with you more. Okay, let's move on. What's the most dangerous thing a marketer can automate without human oversight?
I mean, there's a lot of things you can think of, but, maybe I'll sort of reframe that to say the things where it's most important to have a human in the loop. I think messaging, like, we do a lot of work on creating derivative assets, with AI, and I think the mistake is to think about it as a message generation, factory, as opposed to thinking about it as it's gonna do 80% of the work for you to create new messaging. So it's like, you gotta read it.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
It's hard because it spits out so much information so quickly, and you actually have to read it. People just
yeah, I
wanna
mean, look, I
continue to
tell my
interact.
team, like, don't ship any messaging as done, whether email, website, whatever, until you read it out loud to another human. And does it sound like something you wanna say? That doesn't go away just because we can use AI to help us generate 5 times as much stuff in the same amount of time.
Yeah, to me, creativity is that's my answer, is that you can't automate the uniqueness, right? The human thought. Just fundamentally, large language models are great at predicting what humans would say in this scenario. It doesn't mean they're creating something net new, and so there is that initial spark that actually
Don't
matters.
use it to create the spark, use it to bring the spark to life.
Yeah, to fan the flames.
Yeah.
All right, next question. In 5 years, what will marketers be embarrassed that they used to do manually?
I mean, I'm gonna say spend large amounts of money on traditional filmed, TV ads.
Really? Tell me more. Why is that the thing that's going away?
Uh, I think that what you can do with these video editing tools, is amazing. I think that, and it has gotten exponentially better, like, every 6 weeks.
Give me an example of the current state and what makes you think that video editing is the thing that you're thinking.
Well, and it's not to say video editing, it's production. It's
Sure.
it's the ability to take stills or short video clips and make large, videos out of it, but, we've just been able to generate, things that are incredibly high quality, that, previously would have required, you know, a massive amount of people and time and money. Now we're still to be clear, like, we're still hiring, traditional film crews, and we're doing it the old way, but it's getting to the point when if you say, in 5 years, I think very few companies are gonna be manually shooting 30-second spots.
Yeah, tell me, a little bit about the tech stack that you're using and what's caught your eye.
I haven't personally been using them. I have in my head, I don't have the brand names, but essentially this chain together set of tools that will do all these things that used to be manually people doing them all before. But I think I recommend for future podcast, I can give you our chief creative officer, John Zismos, has
Hmm.
really been playing around with this a lot, or you should have on some of the CEOs of some of the companies
Yeah.
in the space, because it's, and like other things, it's letting you do high quality things, um, in many cases where it wasn't possible. So for example, like, next week, we're doing a pretty big activation at the World Economic Forum, Davos, because they're using Agent Force, um, to power, their mobile app, to help attendees schedule meetings, do briefings, all this kind of things. So, um, all of our creative for different spaces and all the demos and functionality, um, our team went and built, a complete animated video fly through of all our spaces and the demos and all the signs. And we would have never done that before, but it provided a really easy way to see in one place how what we're doing in 4 different locations is all gonna look. And it was built by a video AI engineer we hired on his 2nd day in 6 hours. And we
Fascinating.
just never, I mean, we never would have even thought of creating an actual video fly through for that. So it's like new things that are possible that weren't before, that allowed all the different leaders in the company to be like, "Are we aligned on what we want all this to look like?" "Yes, we're aligned."
Last question for you. What's the one signal that tells you a company is truly ready to start implementing AI agents?
Uh, the company is alive, they have a heartbeat, and they have people. I think everyone needs,
Right.
AI agents. But, I mean, it's hard for me to think of, a company that doesn't need AI agents. I mean, I have to think that, well, let's go back to what we were talking about before, of data and the context of, um being really important for AI to operate, in a successful way. And I think when you have a reasonably good data foundation in that area, that you're planning to automate, that would provide the data that's sufficient, to provide a human with the context to operate effectively, then you're ready, for the AI agents.
Yeah, to me, you hit the nail on the head essentially, which is you have a good data source, you have
Yep.
context, you have something you could feed to an agent. It's also an understanding of a process, right? Agents are great about taking repetitive processes off your plate. So I think about what we do in production. We have plenty of agents. They're doing our guest research, right? They're helping us write our copy. Like same process, different information every time. Agents are wonderful for that. When you're creating new processes, sometimes they can struggle, right? They're not creative. And to me, that is when you've got these repetitive workflows and you've got the right data to feed into it, you don't need a human to do the repetitive tasks all the time.
Yep. Yep. That's
All right. Well, Ariel, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge about the agentic workflows. Thanks again for
Yeah,
being my
absolutely.
guest.
Thank you.
All right. That wraps up this episode of the Martech Podcast. Thanks to Ariel Kelman, the president and CMO of Salesforce, for joining us. If you'd like to contact Ariel, you can find a link to his LinkedIn profile in our show notes or on martechpod.com. Of course, you can always visit his company's website. It's salesforce.com. And if you haven't subscribed and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed next week. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.